This is episode 3 of the Gray Area podcast.
Yo, yo, yo!
Today we will be talking about how we made our movie and the pre-production
Motherfucking
aspect of it.
fragile fish, dog.
Yeah, the movie name is Fragile Fish. Obviously, you can go watch it at fragilefish.com. We are also going to have a website for the podcast. We will hit you with the link as soon as it's done. It's currently in process of being made.
In the meantime, go on SoundCloud.com and look up the Gray Area Podcast. Cha-cha-ching! We got an official name for this motherfucking podcast.
Gray Area spelled Greigh. That is my last name with this young lady man. Anyways, we're going to be talking about the pre-production aspect of it, the movie. Let's jump right in. Go ahead and give them a little rundown on how we got the idea for the movie. Maybe even tell them a little bit about what it's about first if they haven't seen the movie. If you haven't, go ahead and pause it and watch the movie. It's only 12 minutes long.
So essentially, it's kind of a mob type feel movie-ish thing. Okay, so really, it's just kind of two brothers that are involved in this kind of crazy career path, essentially. And they go in for like what they think is like this business meeting, and then it just goes sour. So, just that's basically what's on the IMDb page, man.
So basically, it's really like it really is a mob movie, right?
Right.
I mean,
But it's the reason
Action,
I always say mob
crime.
E or kind of mob E because it's not really like the same Godfather type thing, you know? It's a little
That's
bit
true.
different.
This is true. So we went to Nevada for a wedding, and the two of us drove up there, and so we obviously had a long time to talk, and we were talking about a bunch of different stuff. But then the idea came up: hey, we want to do something, whether it's a movie or a music video. We wanted to write something. Our family's pretty big into writing. Our sister's a phenomenal writer, and she does blogs and writes for her school and that type of stuff. And they've always been interested in writing scripts and doing stuff with movies. So we kind of decided, hey, we want to do a short film, and our friends are phenomenal with cinematography and color correction and that type of stuff. So we had part of the. You don't want to touch the speaker like that. So we kind of had a lot of the other things in place, and the writing was what we needed to focus on. So walk them through that night, the night with Mike that we were hanging out.
Okay. So essentially, we ended up driving up to Laughlin, Nevada, which is fairly close to Las Vegas. It's kind of like a Las Vegas Junior.
It's the fucking bootleg version.
Yeah, basically. And so we just spent some time up there, and as a kind of a bachelor-y type night before our cousin got married to this guy, we went out and played some poker, and he like treated everybody to cigars and beer and like liquor and stuff like that. And so we just sat down. We had like a beer in our hand, and we were smoking cigars while playing poker, and no shame in it. I'd never played poker like officially like that before. Obviously, just playing like at people's houses and friends' places and stuff like that, but never seriously for money and stuff. So that was super fun, and we ended up like having the wedding the next day. Everything went well and everything, so that was cool. Then on the way home, we just started like chatting about being like missing kind of being creative because we played music forever and we didn't really have that avenue for numbers of years. And so we started chatting like, oh man, that was so fun. Like that was a highlight of it, us being able to play that poker game. And then
I think it wasn't just poker; it was the atmosphere, right? We were smoking cigars and
right, yeah,
dealer and having a drink. We just really liked the atmosphere of everything,
right. That's the emphasis really.
the feel
yeah.
of it.
And so we were on the way home chatting and just started talking about, man, I remember for sure it was like, I was just saying like, oh man, that would be so cool just to like have like, because some of our best friends are good cinematographers, and it'd be cool to have them just kind of shoot us playing something like that while smoking or drinking, something like that. And then Taylor just was like, oh, what if we made more of like a story out of it? And then immediately once it was like that idea was kind of greenlit for both of us as far as like, oh, let's actually dedicate some time to this. We just started chatting about what it would look like. And actually, it was funny because certain things that you see in the movie are things that came up 3 or 5 minutes after the initial idea was talked about. So, like, a lot of the fundamental themes were carried over from the original conversation, essentially. I thought that's like I'm going to interject now. So,
I was just gonna say, a lot of things that I watch or that I really thoroughly enjoy watching. I watch a lot of stupid shit, but a lot of things that I really enjoy watching. You know, I remember like 5, 6, 7 years ago watching Boondock Saints, and to me, I really like the aspect of family. You know, the familial aspect of that movie. And I thought, you know, the first one was amazing, and I thought it was really good, but maybe the religious aspect is not something that, I mean, at the time, maybe it was something we not agreed with, but related to.
clinged on to for sure, yeah.
But a lot of people can't, you know, they don't have that religious side. But I don't know, it was just movies like that that really sparked my interest. I was watching Peaky Blinders at that time, which is also a big family type movie. And just really being inspired by that type of thing. And we watch a lot of different stuff. Like, I know we've talked about Memento before in the podcast, and we've talked about what Dark Knight trilogy,
Right.
Christopher Nolan, Quentin Tarantino. Yeah, kind of the ubiquitous favorite directors and movies. But I think people like those because they're different, and I like those because there's themes to them. Another movie that we watched while actually in pre-production of this movie was Legend. I watched that with one of the other producers, Mark, and I thought that movie was super cool. And then Tanner ended up watching it pretty recently. So I think we were in post-production when he watched it. We were actually editing everything. So
I think we actually already finished. I think we released it. Yeah, because we took that trip to California.
okay,
I
you
came
watched
back
it in
and watched
California.
So
Okay.
yeah, watched it completely after the whole process.
But just kind of movies like that are super inspirational, at least to me. You know, you watch something and go, "Hey, how'd they make that? How'd they write that? You know, what
Right.
was the idea?" And obviously, it's a little different than all of those because it's a film packed into 12 minutes. But
Right.
there's a lot of aspects where, and we can kind of talk about those a little bit. Once we had the idea, what did we do with it? What was step one? Because step 0 was kind of
Right.
the idea, right? That that's
Right.
not, you're not actively doing anything to write a movie. That's just like,
Right.
hey, it'd be cool if we did this.
Right.
So what was step 1 for us?
Step 1 honestly was just telling 2 people. One that Mark, who he previously mentioned, essentially acted as a producer, also acted in it. He was like the very first person we even were like, hey, because the I think the second night we came back from Laughlin, he came over to our house at the time, and we were just chatting like, dude, we had this crazy idea. Like, what would you think about it? And he was like super all for it immediately without really having to talk about story or anything like that. And then really, I feel like that was kind of
That's
like
what they call your first follower.
yeah, it's true. So that's like step 0, part 2. Step 1, I feel like really was I'd met a working actor named Ricardo at a job that I was working at the time. And he wasn't obviously doing any acting in relation to me, but he was like a working actor outside of that. And so I called him up and was just saying, hey, we have just been kind of brainstorming with our friends and everything, and really are interested in doing some kind of short film. And I know you've been into acting, and so just talked to him about it. And he had the idea right away that it was like, oh, we should do the acting of the characters, and that wasn't really something at the time that we had thought about. We were like, oh, we'll get 2 actors, you know, that we can have them do this and pull it off.
Well, I think, you know, we had that cheesy like not drama school, but like church plays and that type of stuff. And
Right.
I did background acting, which essentially is just you're an extra.
Right.
So we had no real acting experience. We'd been on set for a couple things, and I'd been on some really high production shows, and I was on a Jeff Daniels newsroom show. but we really were very little to absolutely no experience acting.
Right.
And when we kind of sat around once we got the script, and the script went back and forth. So Tanner and I constructed the main idea of it, kind of the really, really rough outline of what we wanted it to be about.
Right.
And then Mark, who acted as a producer, and Brad, who acted as a DP, director of photography, we all sat down and said, hey, how long do we want this to be? What do we want it to look like? What are some of our inspirations? That type of thing. I think that's
Right.
huge. That part was huge for us because
super huge.
it took it from an idea to being like something that we're actually going to execute. So it took from the plan
Right.
stage to the execution.
I think too what was super cool about it was like everyone was able, because obviously Taylor and I were kind of like the brain what came up with the idea, but we were super open about it because we were super novice. We were saying like, hey, what do we like to see in movies, and how could we do this? Because for me, really, the fundamental importance was just showing like believable characters without like even a hint of cheese. Because I'm always so susceptible towards. Not susceptible towards, but like when watching something, if there's even like a hint of cheesiness to it, it just loses me immediately.
Except Sherlock Holmes. You still watch that show.
I see that. I mean, that's what I'm saying. There's just a few episodes, it seems like. I watch them over a number of years, literally. And every time like I revisit them, there's always like certain parts that are really cheesy to me. And then I just immediately like lose the buy-in. So back essentially to Fragile Fish was like, just chatting with specifically Bradley and Mark was just like, oh, what do we love to see in these movies, or in movies in general, and then what do we want to capture? Like immediately thoughts of like action sequences and car driving scenes and chase scenes.
It's funny when we go back and revisit that conversation, because I remember the initial thing was that we wanted it to be more action based,
Right.
and then you end up watching it and it's very, if it were a full length, people would say it's about character development and about the conversation, the writing, and that type of thing.
Right.
But when we initially talked about it, I know that we talked about like Ira, the character that I ended up playing, like kicking the bodyguard and like doing some fucking backflip or something, and then just seeing how it ended up, it's very believable.
Right.
It's when you watch it, especially the action sequences. That was PJ Jenkins, who did one of the characters in there. He was also a former New Jersey State Trooper. He did all the choreography. Basically, we sat in our living room and said, "What would it be like if someone actually pulled a gun? What could you do? With some very basic training to make sure they don't fucking blow your head off." And he's like, "Well, you could just do this and pull up on this, and then pull it this way, and then boom, they're either their finger gets broken or they get rid of it."
Right.
And it was, everything we did was based on realism, and we were just talking to everybody and saying, "Hey, how do we make this believable rather than two guys who basically have no experience, rather than making it like a Jason Bourne type jump through the fucking window and blow everyone away? How do we make it just business people that have maybe some basic training in not dying,
Right.
whether it be hand-to-hand combat or just de-arming somebody."
Right. Or disarming, rather.
Yeah, disarming.
I think what was the reason.
So after hang on a second. After we did that, we had Ricardo come over, and let's talk about kind of the evolution of that, so it doesn't get too lost. I don't want to go on too many rabbit trails so people can follow it.
Sure. I think the first meeting we had was with two other people, and just kind of brainstorming of people that we knew that were involved in film stuff. And really, Ricardo, that first meeting was just four of us: myself, Taylor, Ricardo, and another gentleman. And really, it was just kind of like talking.
Who was the fourth one?
Manny, I think.
Oh yeah, Manny.
Yeah.
Manny Partida.
Yeah,
that's right.
And so we're just kind of sitting around talking about like essentially like how would we do this? Because there was no real pretentiousness with myself and Taylor, because we didn't care to impress anybody with what we knew about movies. We just went there like no shame, like this is an idea we have. We're betting on ourselves to be able to complete this project, but we genuinely don't really know anything about the actual production side. So a lot of it was like talking about. The first meeting was talking about like kind of what movie making looks like, but more than that, it was just talking about story. That was a fundamental thing that we would always come back to. That's what I was most passionate about, was how do we make this story work, and what are
I feel like when you're getting someone involved, it's kind of like a pitch deck when you're trying to get investors or something.
right.
Because
Yeah, totally.
because you're like, they're basically like, hey, give me the elevator pitch of the movie, and then when you kind of pique their interest, you kind of have to give them the full business plan,
Right,
and say,
right.
okay, this is the script, this is how we plan to execute it,
Mhm.
what's your budget, and then we kind of went, oh
Right.
fuck, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally like that. It was like, I mean, what we were saying is on like independent, like micro budget type stuff. After doing this research, it's like, you're selling the script. Like if the script is good, you'll get people that want to work on it. It was the exact same thing for us. It was like just talking about the general idea, and then immediately, I know everyone that we chatted with immediately. The first thing was like them just kind of being silent for a second, and then thinking about it, and then responding with how cool they thought it was, and then immediately trying to like add something to it, which I thought was awesome. Like it'd be like somebody had this like, oh, what if it was like this, or what if we did something like this, which I think was kind of the beauty of it, because it was a bunch of like independent novices that came together to make something special.
So after Ricardo came once, he said, I think he mentioned at that meeting, I remember sitting across from him, and he mentioned we weren't doing table reads. The script wasn't even fully complete.
Right.
We were kind of wondering how it would end, how we leave it, not a cliffhanger, but how we kind of pique someone's interest for something more.
Right.
And he said, hey, I have this friend. He's getting a lot of work right now, and I think he'd be really great to have a part in this movie. And so the next time that he comes around, we had that guy, PJ Jenkins,
Right.
phenomenal actor, really fucking intimidating dude. He plays the bodyguard or the doorman, whichever you prefer to call him. But he added a ton when we were in the pre-production aspect of it.
Yeah. Because he was coming to our meetings after shooting something every single time. So like it was like he'd bring something over. Like
practical knowledge.
Right, practical information knowledge.
So with him, we finished up the script. We said, hey, what should we write in there to make it that we can actually shoot it, so we're not saying like, all right, and then these two cars collide and they explode. We wrote part of it knowing the fact like, hey, our budget is probably going to be under $5,000 for sure.
Oh yeah, like top end would be $5,000. And that the first cut, I feel like when we were first chatting before we really started connecting with Ricardo and PJ, this was like step 0 again. Was like talking about writing like a car chase scene.
That would have been fucking cool.
It would have been cool, but it was just completely out of budget. There would be no way for us to really do anything like that.
So fast forward like 2 weeks, right? We kind of nixed that idea. We kind of decided, hey, that's not the direction we're going to go. Once we had a finalized idea of some of the smaller details, are we going to have a car chase scene? Are we not? Are we going to have a lot of fighting? Is there going to be a lot of action?
Right.
We kind of wrote around it so that it was geared towards I guess like miniature character development and breakthroughs and conversation. We really focused on the writing less than the action, and we really wrote. Tanner did a really good job writing his butt off. We came up and then revised it, and then he and Mark would look at it, and then we kind of do a read through and be like, this part seems kind of cheesy. This isn't something that I would say personally, because at this point we're like, okay, this is a character I'm going to play.
Right.
So rather than getting to the point of shooting it, we started doing a bunch of table reads. I think we had 3 or 4 of them. And then pretty soon at the end, it was like kind of acting out a little bit and saying like, okay, cool, here's the gun, we have the props, we have a little bit of this. And I want to take a step back for a second. Ricardo, initially, he had played a coyote in another TV show. I don't even recall what TV show, but he played a coyote. And we started doing table reads, and we didn't have anyone for the mob boss, which is Benicio. And we were like, should he be Italian? Should he be? I think at one point we're like, he's going to be Chinese. He's going to be a Chinese mob boss because the Italian thing is way overdone. It's going to come across cheesy. We tried to get in contact with somebody, kind of fell through, and we started doing these table reads. And Ricardo did it as kind of like this Mexican.
Gentleman almost.
Yeah, kind of like a gentleman, but classy. But no, he's gonna fucking kill you if you do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
And there was a point where Tanner and I looked at each other when we were doing these table reads, and we didn't really know what the mob boss would be in terms of nationality.
Right. I think that
Not that it was super important, but it was
right.
just like one aspect you have to think about
Right.
when you're doing a little bit of casting.
I think the thing that like the presumption that we had upon writing that character was just that he'd be much older, you know, because that was our first hang up, was thinking like, oh, like we'll have Ricardo, who's kind of like the younger, like suave guy, play the Coyote.
Ricardo looks
and
like
then-
he's in his mid-30s, but he's actually, I think, 40.
something like that. I don't know. Yeah, he's older than he looks for sure. Shout out to that sexy beast. But but yeah, I think after like realizing like who cares, like if we're making this, we don't have to like fit to any mold, you know. And that was especially the thing, is like the Italian thing. We're like, let's just skip that because everybody does that, right? Like the Italian New Yorker thing.
So we wanted to, when he was doing the read-through, there was a time where he was doing it with this really fucking cool accent, and we actually didn't even have a name for him at the time.
Right.
Because obviously we don't want a guy named fucking Jimmy if it's gonna be, you know, anyone but an Italian mobster.
Right.
So we wanted it relatable, but we didn't want it to be cliche. And when he started doing this, you know, going in and out of this accent, we're like, holy shit, this could work. I think we looked at each other and we knew, like,
Yeah.
okay, he's gonna play the mob boss. So now we have to find someone else for the Coyote.
Well, what was cool is like that night after they left, because typically for the table reads, we'd have like a good number of people, basically like the lead sound guy, Ricardo, like that, the fundamental actors along with us. And then that night after everybody left, it was just like myself, Taylor, and I think our sound guy, Sam. And we're just like, dude, let's freaking just have Ricardo do it. Taylor had the idea. He told me, he's like, dude, and we didn't really know Ricardo that well at this point, like outside.
I didn't
just
know him at
me.
all.
Right.
I only knew him as a
because of this. Yeah.
as an actor. I didn't know him doing anything else.
Right. And so he told me, he's like, dude, why don't we just have him do it? I'm like, do what? Like the mob boss? We're like talking about it back and forth. And then I just sent him a text because like we talked about, we're like, this could really work. He's already put the time in. We're like, okay, we don't have to like find this fancy actor if he does a good job. I texted him just saying if we could have him basically take that part, and he just responded immediately, like super fast, saying he'd be honored and stuff. And I think that's what was really special about this whole project. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like connecting on those levels, being able to say like, being like this fancy director texting one of our actors, like offering him the lead part essentially outside of the brothers, and him just being super stoked about it. We're like, you do know we're like super like low key independent, right?
Because at that point he was doing something with like Alicia Keys, and he was getting really good work.
Yeah.
So for him to be honored to work with us, and for him to
Special. Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was really cool.
It was.
How we got the other people that were involved in it. Most of the people that were behind the scenes that did camera operation, that type of stuff, were our friends, and then or friends of friends.
Right.
But Hortensia, which is the madam, she was actually brought along. Was it PJ or Ricardo?
Ricardo.
It was Ricardo.
Mhm.
Yeah. So Ricardo really had a lot of faith in this project because he brought along Hortensia, which is played by Tanya Carmona Daniels.
Some
and
of
then
the prostitutes at the end, or hookers, whatever.
yeah, Moni Scorpo, Moni Love.
Something.
Yeah, so it was just cool to have belief, and then the night, everything that we were doing, you know, the nights that we were doing table reads, it just felt good. There was good chemistry between everybody in the cast, and everybody was really
Right.
cool. And then the bartender, Frank Ellis Wells, we found him actually online. We basically made a posting that said, you know, the last piece that we need is this bartender, and that's the one person. We watched a ton of these short films, right? And there's a bunch of good ones. You know, there's that Jack Daniels one with the Punisher, that one, and there's but
Jack yeah, Jack Daniels isn't the alcohol. Right.
but I mean that's not micro budget. But some of these micro budget ones, you look and you can tell it's all the director's friends basically,
Right.
and that's what we wanted to avoid. We didn't want someone to go, yeah, they all went to college together. This is a school project.
Right.
So we wanted there to be variation in types of people, age, experience. We wanted everyone to have some uniqueness, not just to be
Right.
like everyone's between the age of 18 and 22. all this artsy type kid that you can tell is just wearing some cheesy ass makeup.
Yeah.
And some of those movies are phenomenal, but casting to us was important. We did research on everything, whether it came down to building the squib, which is like basically emulates a gunshot wound,
Right.
to figuring out camera placement, to using apps, to writing the script, to everything. We did a ton of work pre-production. I mean, that was definitely one of the most time-consuming pieces was research, because us not knowing a whole lot about movie making, I've been on set for a couple of TV shows, but you're not hearing the pre-production part of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
That you're not hearing the
Right.
talk, the scripts, the writing, you're not hearing anything. It's just like
That's true.
all you hear is and action.
Yep.
That's it.
Exactly.
What else do you want to talk about? What other parts of pre-production are there?
Man. Yeah, I think that was kind of like the final step, was like getting people kind of familiar with what they're going to be doing in it.
I forgot to mention Fabian. He was I think he only had a couple lines during the movie, and
he ended up actually playing
the coyote. Yeah,
Right.
but people like that, man, just having a presence on screen and then having props that look legit. Like we got blowback airsoft guns. It's funny because the money we did spend, we spent it well. I feel like, those are things that we can
Yep.
use again. That's a $120 purchase. Breakaway bottles, we had to go figure out where to buy those, and I think PJ gave us a place where to buy those, right? Was it PJ?
I think it was combined PG and Ricardo, because they just went on a project that bought some from there.
Those fuckers are like $16 a piece or something.
Oh my gosh, ridiculous.
Yeah, it's so expensive, and we drove like an hour and a half, burned half a tank of gas to get there. So those
Yep.
fucking things cost us like $200.
Yep.
But you have to get enough to make sure you get the shot. Like, what if you break
Right,
one? They're
right.
like, oh fuck, I wasn't recording. Because it's not like we're dealing with these big
think-
camera crews where they have A, B, and C on set.
Exactly. I think we had like 6 in general and shot like 3 of them, and then realized like we didn't even need that many, because we just basically started from like the a bottle breakaway scene, and then went to like cut into another part of it. But yeah, I think what I was gonna say is just essentially because we didn't really have like a set crew or anything like that, or no like, oh yeah, he's a good DP or whatever, we would be like kind of gather the creatives that we knew around us and be like, oh, how is this person going to fit into the project, or what is this person going to do? It's like finding actors for characters, where on the other side with crew being like to lead them as far as getting everybody motivated or excited about the project, and then really being like, okay, this is kind of your area where you're going to work. And I feel like that was probably like the biggest stretch for us as just people, was trying to find get a ragtag group of our friends, be like, oh yeah, this is basically like a Hollywood movie that we're trying to make, and this is your part in it. That was a big part of pre-production, was just getting people to latch on to their skill set.
Yep. Yeah, it was an interesting process. I think. How long did the pre-production part take? From about 2.5 months.
Yeah, about 2.5 months.
Yeah, so the time that we had the idea to actually shooting that pre-production part took about 2.5 months.
Right.
Um,
The initial idea, like in April of 2016, heavy pre-production, May, and then we shot early June. So yeah, it was about probably less than 2.5 months, but pretty close to that. With like basically every day, we were both working full-time jobs at the time. And it was like every day we'd get off, because both of us worked like 9 to 5s. Get off, come home, chill out, and just chat about it basically. Then start structuring like, I think we kind of glossed over this, but like the actual screenplay, the script writing portion, after we had that initial meet up with like Ricardo and Manny, they were basically saying the priority here in the next week or two was basically to lock down an initial script, right? Like kind of like find the draft, so that we could kind of start to build characters and stuff like that. And so that was kind of like, that's when we went really into overdrive in late April, and then early May was just getting the script together.
What else? What is there anything else that we use, software or anything like that you want to talk about that maybe will help somebody else?
Yeah, what was the shoot, let me see if I can look this up. There was a basically it was like had a tie-in app, I think, but it was online. Let's see this. I'm gonna find it in just a second here.
It's pretty cool because different people could contribute towards it. Celtics.
There we
the
go.
one.
CELTX. That one was super cool. So, like, I mean, the title's free script writing and all-in-one production studios. You can literally do like everything on there, like shot list, screenplay. It'll format into like a draft format, like a script format. So, like when we would like print out copies to hand to actors, like it would be like official off of like a.
It wasn't like a
Tarantino
fucking
set.
Microsoft Word document. You know, it was
Right,
like which the first couple we did do like that.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I just typed it up basically in Pages, and then when we got this Celtics thing, which was super cool, that's when it kind of ramped up, like the kind of how official the screenplay became because we were writing in the correct spots, like this is what the camera's doing, or this is the lighting, or whatever at this shot, and then when we handed it to actors for the actual when we'd sit down and read through the script, it would automatically like create like a scenario or a vibe or like a
It
situation.
was just a sense of professionalism. Like,
Right.
hey, they did some research. You know, they may have not done a movie before, but they're doing the proper research to
Right.
make it as good as it can
Yep.
be.
So shout out to Celtics, just for that cool software for like little filmmakers to be able to.
And I think it's a
become
freemium
official.
software, right? Like they have a free version, but
Right.
you got to upgrade for some of the cooler shit.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So we'll make sure to tag that in the YouTube comments. If
For
you're
sure.
watching this on podcasts, it's CELTX Celtics.
sure.
Just Celtics.com. But I think really that's it. You know, if you guys have any other questions in terms of pre-production, we're going to go back to being our goofy selves next episode. But we're going to be doing the production one soon. Kind of the cameras we use, what lighting and stuff, how we got those. That's going to be a little bit more,
In detail.
in
This
detail and
was
in
just
depth.
kinda like-
This was
Yeah.
high level. You know,
Right.
this was just not really getting to the nitty gritty. This was just like the conversations we had,
Mhm.
how we started it, and hopefully motivating. You know, if there's one fucking person that listens to this and goes, "Hey, you know, I do want to write a movie," or maybe it's not a movie. Maybe they want to write a music video, or maybe they want to play music. They don't know what to do.
Mhm.
Talk to people.
Yep.
Talk to your friends. Talk
I
to
think-
people online. See if there's anyone interested. I mean, when we screened the trailer for the first time, basically we were like, I think I made a Facebook post like, "Hey, I need some of my creative friends to screen a trailer of a movie." You know, just being really blunt and honest and just saying, "Hey, you
Yep.
know, this is what
Yep.
we were doing. See if there's anybody interested in, you know, helping you out, giving you some honest feedback." And that's really what we did. So if anybody has questions for us on how we did something, or maybe an idea, something like that, we'd love to hear it. Tweet us. It's at Gray Brothers, GREIGH Brothers, spelled normally, unlike Gray. SoundCloud, podcasts, YouTube, the 9.
For sure.
We're on everything.
Yep. And just to make it like official now, we are the Gray Area Podcast. He just mentioned our Twitter page. So tweet us there. We are on the podcast app now. Still kind of getting the final tweaks done. We are going up on Stitcher pretty soon here. It's going to be under the Gray Area or the Gray Area Podcast. And we're trying to take this thing to the next level, guys. So thanks for listening.
All right, guys. Take care.